specifically to the Camino, I feel it also contains in it a metaphor for a life's journey. It feels like a very, very appealing way to do some of that reconnection, right? To plug back myself with some of the things that matter. One of my mantras is to live life poetically. And what do I mean by that? Those are not my words. I have borrowed these from an exceptional poet that lived many years. Think of the time of year. I find that springtime and fall are two of my favorite moments in the bring along a little journal, right? When you're doing the Camino, because you're probably gonna find any number of things that maybe you want to sketch something. The number gives you a sense of where you're at right now, okay? And the arrow is perhaps most important. It gives you a sense of what direction you're going in. You want to make sure you stock up on all your medicines and supplies that you're going to need. And with people with diabetes, at a bare minimum, you might have.
Hello, pilgrims. Welcome to the Way to Your Why podcast. We have been here today with Manny Hernandez, and we're going to be talking about his desire of going to the Camino de Santiago. In the future, he has not walked the Camino yet. But then also we're going to be talking something very interesting for a lot of people that may be suffering from diabetes. He is a diabetic, so he's going to tell a little bit about that. So welcome, Manny. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Okay, and I have a curiosity. One of my curiosity it is, why would you like to make the Camino de Santiago?
I find that, especially nowadays, when there is so much of what we take up time with that is on screens, that kind of takes us away from a meaningful connection with others or with nature. It feels like a very, very appealing way to do some of that reconnection, right? To plug back myself with some of the things that matter. And as it relates specifically to the Camino, I feel it also contains in it a metaphor for a life's journey, right? And having, just like setting yourself on a path to accomplish something, and in the process, in the journey, to have time to meditate, think about your why, to the point of your podcast, which I think, by the way, is like an amazing name for a podcast. So it has been something that I've thought about for many years, and I was really excited when I learned that you were focusing on this. It's like, now this is your life, to like help other pilgrims and wannabe pilgrims to find their way through the Camino. So I'm very excited to participate in this conversation and to learn more about the Camino, and hopefully also in the course of the conversation to talk a little bit more about tips from the perspective of people with diabetes, and that could be helpful.
Yeah. And thank you for saying all that. And that's exactly why we have in the podcast, because we wanted to be a source for anyone that wants to make the Camino at any point of time, that they can have different podcasts here in our channel to do research and to learn about perspective from different people, because everyone have a different opinion about their experience of what they are about to live. So talking, and I know that you do so many things. One of the things is that you are a writer as well. So, and as a writer, you know that you maybe hear about that. There are a lot of writers that write a book about the Camino. And so, and on your perspective, what you write for, how would you relate something with the Camino with being a writer?
Well, my my preferred genre of writing is poetry. Uh,
Okay.
and I have become acquainted with, or reacquainted more, so with writing in the past 5 years, basically since the pandemic. I had always been an avid reader. I mean, as you might be able to tell from, I mean, that's an actual, my actual bookshelves,
Okay.
actual books. I haven't read all of them. I'm working through that. It's a journey. It's a camino as well.
Okay.
But to me, there is an element of poetry that I try to apply to life, and one of my mantras is to live life poetically.
Okay.
And what do I mean by that? Those are not my words. I have borrowed these from an exceptional poet that lived many years ago in Venezuela, my the country that I came from to live in the U.S. 25 years ago, and he used to talk about living poetically, and that's about living with intention, living, paying attention to what's going on around you, and like when you do that, whether you're listening to the birds or noticing the clouds moving, right? Like, so taking time to really pay attention about what's going on around you, a whole world opens up. And I feel that's like very much aligned with when I think of a Camino. I think that it's a way to live life poetically. It's a way to kind of slow down and reconnect with what's going on around you without letting the things going on in the world, the notifications, the alerts on your phone, be a source of worry or concern, but rather like really be present, be in the moment, and pay attention about to what's going on.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. That's exactly what the Camino is about. That you have all surrounded for a lot of scene, but then on a different pace, and you have time for self encounter, and then you can live a life differently. And then when you return back from the Camino, you're gonna see the world in a totally different way. That is gonna be very, very productive for yourself.
I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah. So I'm talking about that. Do you have thinking about any timing that you would like to walk the Camino?
I well, I mean, as to when to do it, I have a few things going on in my life these days that make it a little challenging to take on right now.
You were talking, Manny, about the time of the year that you're going to be going to the Camino.
Yes, I think perhaps a more realistic time frame for me to plan for a trip to the Camino would be in 2026. And as I consider the full year, having recently been in Spain during the winter time, I suspect maybe winter might not be the best time. I'm just purely speculating, but I suspect that is the case. But also for someone like me living with diabetes, maybe the summer might add some unnecessary challenges that we could probably avoid if we stick to either the spring or the fall time.
Yeah, you're right. So the best times to walk the Camino for people that does not live in Spain is or the spring or the fall time.
Yes.
And then talking about diabetes. So what would you consider before going to the Camino? What would you take as a precaution?
Yeah. So, and just a little bit of extra context. So, I have lived with diabetes for now almost 23 years of my life. Uh, this does not necessarily make me an authority, but like this is just to say that I've lived that long, and I now try to take full advantage of all the options that my health plan affords me in terms of taking care, best possible care of my diabetes. So I think the most important thing to start off is to have a conversation with your physician, right? So whether you go primarily to a general physician, a primary care physician, or because you're on insulin, you go to an endocrinologist as part of your care team. So having a conversation with your physician about it, right? Because they're on your team, they're on your side, and they're going to be rooting for you, and they also probably have a good, visibility into your the specifics of your diabetes care. So I would strongly recommend, before embarking on anything of this magnitude, to have a kind of conversation, just like you would before engaging in a new exercise regime, right? You want to make sure that you're set up to succeed, and I am 100% convinced that it can be done in a safe and healthy manner. But just to be sure that you take the appropriate steps to take the best care of yourself. So I would start there. I think there's a few things that I think of when I consider, as someone with diabetes, steps to bear in mind to prepare for it. First off, I would say, as you would with any overseas travel, right? Or traveling out of the country for more than a few days, right? And that would be the case of the Camino, right? Because you're not going to just go to do like 2 days and then get off the Camino and go like, no, you're going to do probably like 2-3 weeks, right? So with that being the case, you want to make sure you stock up on all your medicines and supplies that you're going to need. And with people with diabetes, at a bare minimum, you might have, pills you need. When you start, over time, you might need other things like insulin, or if you wear an insulin pump, you might need to change your reservoirs. And if you wear a continuous glucose monitor, you need to change your sensor. So if you have diabetes, you know what I'm talking about. And so if you are going to be overseas, out of the country for 2-3 weeks, my rule of thumb generally is to pack up like at least 3 times as many things or as many supplies as I would need. So that could come with its challenges, because that might mean that you might need to get more than a month's supplies of reservoirs or insulin or whatnot. So this is to say, you need to anticipate this with plenty of time. Maybe order a 90-day supply of whatever you need, which you can only do 4 times a year, right? So, and it is possible, if that's not an option for you, it is possible for you to and you say recently got your insulin prescribed, dispensed at the pharmacy. You can ask for a travel override. So this is something that, if you have a health plan, you can call about it, right? And tell them, hey, I'm going to be traveling overseas, and I'm not going to be back by the time that I need to refill X or Y medication or prescription. So can you provide my pharmacy with a travel override? And they will do that. They're not going to do that a bunch of times a year, but once, twice a year, they will accommodate that so that you can have enough supplies and not run the risk of running out of anything essential for your life while you're out. My recommendation is to try and really stock up by getting 2 to 3 times as much of anything you need with you for the trip, to account for anything that you cannot imagine that could go wrong, right? And what we hope is that nothing goes wrong, but you want to be prepared in case something does. When you travel, and this is also not specific just to the Camino, but in general, it's a good principle. All your supplies, all your meds or whatnot, take them with your carry-on. Don't check them in, okay? Because we know horror stories of lost luggage and all that, and sometimes they turn up, sometimes they don't. So in case they don't turn up, you don't want to have anything essential for your diabetes management stuck with your lost luggage, because it's going to be a lot more complicated to make up for that overseas than at home. So that would be thing two. Do you want to dive into maybe more of the specifics in connection with the actual Camino, or do you want to go in a different direction at this point? Like,
we can go anything that goes related to exercise.
Okay.
That's fine.
Perfect. So one thing anybody, actually everybody who takes insulin, right? So not everybody with diabetes takes insulin, but everybody who does take insulin is unfortunately familiar with the fact that your blood sugars fluctuate potentially from high to low, right? Or can fluctuate from high to low. And when you're exercising, as you would, even, walking would constitute exercise, if it's prolonged, as it would be in the case of the Camino. When you're exercising for long, your blood sugars, as a result of that exercise, are going to drop, right? So it is, I would, do you have to do this? I wouldn't say you have to do this, but would I recommend it? I absolutely would. I am a strong advocate for continuous glucose monitors. So continuous glucose monitors are kind of the new generation of glucose monitoring. The previous generation was the finger sticks. You would poke your finger, get a drop of blood, apply the drop of blood to a blood glucose meter, and real quick get a number, right? So that is the equivalent of just getting a sample. I mean, like opening your eyes, getting taking a picture, and then closing your eyes for maybe another however many hours until the next time you open your eyes. So what could happen? You could run into a wall. you could walk off a cliff. So a lot of things could happen if you're walking with your eyes closed, right? So the continuous glucose monitor is every 5 minutes, a sensor on your body, could be on your abdomen, the back of your arm, anywhere there's enough, fat tissue, you are generating a signal that gets picked up by your phone, right? So here's an example of what this is my continuous glucose monitor for the past, 3 hours or so. Okay. So notice that there are two things here. There's a number and there's an arrow, right? Okay. So the number gives you a sense of where you're at right now, okay? And the arrow is perhaps most important. It gives you a sense of what direction you're going in. So this one right now had a 143 and a flat arrow. Now, if I were doing the Camino right now and I had a 143 and a flat arrow, I would say great, okay? Because 143 is, although elevated, it's not super high, but more importantly, it's not super low. And the flat arrow means that my numbers are staying relatively still, okay? But that arrow might actually be pointing diagonal down, diagonal up, bottom up, or there's another modality that's like 2 arrows down, 2 arrows up. So depending of diagonal or bottom or up, it gives you a sense that it's dropping, your blood sugar is dropping or rising. And whether it's diagonal, bottom, or double bottom, or the same upward, it gives you a sense of how rapidly it's dropping or rising. Okay. And that part is crucial because if you have, for example, if I had a 143 and 2 arrows down, or let's take 100, which is like the proverbial unicorn when you live with diabetes, to get 100, right? Okay. If you had 100 and 2 arrows down, it means you need to very rapidly take glucose. Okay. Because if not, you will be dangerously low. You will have a dangerous low blood sugar within a matter of 10, 15 minutes. So that's something that only having that continuous glucose monitoring can give you that the finger stick doesn't, right? Okay. So this is something that you wouldn't be able to just go in the pharmacy and get. If you are on insulin, you need to talk to your physician and they need to prescribe a continuous glucose monitor. And there's like 3 brands in the market. I'm brand agnostic. I'm not advocating any one brand, or actually there's 4 brands in the market. But I personally find that whatever brand you choose, it doesn't matter, or whatever brand your health plan covers, it is extremely helpful as a person with diabetes to have that information as you embark on a journey of this magnitude. And I would say more broadly, it is extremely valuable as you go about life with diabetes to have this information, because you learn a lot and you have real-time information about how a meal, an activity, a stress level, even an infection, getting sick can even impact your blood sugar levels. Like how that is affecting your blood sugar in real time. So if you don't take insulin, the good news for you is that you can get an off the shelf, not off the shelf, over the counter, okay, equivalent, right? So there's two products in the market. One is, the brand name is Stello, and the other one, the brand name is Lingo. Okay, one is made by the company Abbott, and the other one's made by the company Dexcom, that are roughly equivalent to what I just described, but they're not designed for people who are on insulin.
Okay.
But they would give you, as someone not on insulin, comparable information. Okay, and those you can get without a prescription, which is a valuable part. So along with having a continuous glucose monitor, being equipped with it, I would say, and this is also not going to be news to anyone with diabetes, but like, arm yourself. Like, there's the friendly glucose tabs you're going to find in your local, pharmacy that you can buy. Take a bunch of these. So basically, these are like quick to dissolve, and they look like they're about the size of a little thicker than a quarter, but about the size of a quarter. Each of these, 4 of these are 15 grams of carbs, which is about what you would need to, rescue a not so bad low blood sugar. Okay. Or prevent a not so bad blood sugar. If you have a severe low blood sugar, we're talking, I was just showing you 143, I was telling you 100 is kind of like the unicorn, right? But if you're in the 40s, in the 50s, like, you should not venture out to walk, right? Like, it can be very dangerous. So, like, again, that's why the information is so valuable, to have it so you can make decisions on the spot, right? And not put yourself at risk. So glucose tablets are a convenience that you can get at your local pharmacy. They're also available overseas, but as someone with diabetes, if you need to rescue or prevent a low, also you can take anything that has rapid acting sugar in it. So orange juice is a great example, or a non-diet soda. I mean, normally you would want to not be drinking soda anyways, but if you are trying to, rescue, elevate a low blood sugar, or prevent a low blood sugar, from occurring, if you're in one of those like downward arrows, you want to take regular soda, because that will do the trick. I mean, that's rapid acting glucose that you can get. There's I mean, in general, like, also, it is a good practice, and there's information on the internet about this that you should definitely read about. I'm not an athlete. I'm not a marathoner or anything like that, but I can tell you, if you're going to be doing prolonged exercise, like walking throughout the day, it is important to consume carbs throughout your walk, to make sure that you prevent, you don't get to a low blood sugar, but you prevent the low blood sugar from occurring. Because what is happening? When you eat carbohydrates are going to rise your blood glucose. Okay. When you walk, you exercise, it's going to drop your blood glucose. So what you're trying to do is like to counter the effect of those two things all through the day. And if you are wearing an insulin pump, which I am, right? But most insulin pumps have modes that let you turn on like an exercise mode, right? Okay. What does that do? It makes the insulin slow down or shut off completely to prevent, an extra thing that will cause your blood sugar to go down. So exercise will make your blood sugar go down. Insulin is made to lower your blood sugar. So if you're exercising, you don't need as much, or sometimes no insulin. So it's a this is in no small part why it's important to involve your physician, primary care, or endocrinologist before you embark on this, right? So they may have, depending on your specific therapy, they may have even more recommendations that might be helpful for you to take into account to, again, make sure that you can make the most of that time doing the Camino and be fine along the way, not experience blood sugar crashes, um, and just like come out the other end having been able to live life poetically.
Okay, that's very interesting information to know. And what about having meals while you are walking? How will you do that?
Uh, I mean, just like you would. I mean, perhaps the most important consideration is like, and this is where, again, also not a physician, so I wouldn't make specific recommendations, but you know, because the meal itself, just like the insulin would lower your blood glucose, the meal would normally elevate your blood glucose. But then again, you're going to have the counter effect to that, which is the walking, right? So taking the meals, like uh, it 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 really will depend on the carbohydrate content of the meal
Okay.
you're having. It will depend as well on the fiber intake of the meal you're having. So if you're having a very fiber rich meal, it will counter some of the carbohydrates that you're taking. So you gotta bear that in mind. If you're taking a meal that has a lot of fat or protein, which a lot of Mediterranean food, right, like has, like if you taking, say, a sandwich, a baguette with like manchego and like chorizo. I mean, so some of the delicious things that that Spanish food affords us, like you got to factor in some of the fat and protein content because those could actually impact your blood glucose later on. So like meals
Okay.
with a lot of fat or protein content can do that. But in general, I would say, again, not a physician, but generally speaking, if you're going to be doing the Camino and you're going to be primarily, wanting to stay in a safe range, a a a protein heavy and a fat heavy, meal like a good baguette with like cheese and ham and whatnot, like would actually be helpful to kind of like serve as a buffer for down the road, right? Not just a
Okay.
carb that you're taking right now, but a buffer for down the road.
Okay. Interesting to know. And what about preparation before you're starting walking the Camino? Let's say that you are still here in the US. And what kind of training will you do before going to the Camino?
Well, to not repeat myself regarding the conversation with your physician, but I think it's definitely important to make sure that you come up with a training plan that is in line with the Camino that you're going to be doing, right? How many miles a day you intend to cover, and what type of terrain also in. Um, I mean, depending on your age, I mean, I'm 50, almost 53 this year. So for me, I have to consider elements regarding my knees. Sometimes, I need to consider that. So, I mean, generally speaking, I would say the you need to you should never just go to the Camino cold turkey, right? Like without having walked consistently and increasingly longer distances over the course of a period of time prior to going, because that would just be nuts. Just like trying to compete for a marathon without any previous training would. Now this is not a marathon, but it's a long walk, so not to be taken lightly and not to be minimize. So I would imagine. I mean, do you guys have like recommended trainings or preparations? Because like I think that would be super helpful.
Yeah, well, in general, talking, what we recommend is that you start walking. Let's say first you start walking 2 miles a day, 4 miles, then you increase it to five. And the maximum that I have done is like a twice one trail that is about 10 miles.
Hmm.
And so that way you get used to what you're going to be facing when you're walking the Camino, and
Yeah.
just not go flat, just go up and down as well. That because that's what you're going to be experiencing on the Camino. The important thing here also to take in consideration is that the Camino is not a marathon, it's not a race, and everybody can go at their own pace. So if you are feeling that you cannot continue going, just stop, slow down, and even depending on the route that you're walking, you can call a taxi and then pick it up. Probably not on the same spot where you are, but maybe very close where you are.
Yeah.
That depends if the car has access where you exactly
Yeah.
are at the moment. But
Yeah.
yeah, that's general what we recommend in general. But of course, like you've been saying, it's always very important to talk with your physician because those are the ones that know your health,
Yeah.
and are the ones that are going to provide you advice, the better advice, and what you be doing. But in general talking, yes, those are the recommendations.
Yeah. Makes perfect sense.
Okay. Then talking about something that different. I know that we were talking at the beginning about that you are a writer and you wanted to show me something. Can you talk about?
Yeah, well, I mean, since you mentioned this, so this was the poetry book I wrote. It was published in 2023.
Okay.
So this is it's titled. It's in Spanish. So
Okay.
it means labyrinth in Spanish, and I mean, I this was definitely a book that was written with. I mean, I like to sometimes describe it as like as I was going through my own labyrinth. This was primarily written during the time of the pandemic,
Okay.
so very difficult time for all of us, for sure. But I tried to capture, what that sort of process was like for me in the poems on this book. But again, I feel perhaps the most important thing about this book was that it was my first exercise in trying to do what I mentioned, like to live life poetically, right? So there are a number of poems in it that reflect that, ability to just like sit back and contemplate things and not take them for granted, but
Okay.
really take them in and value them and thank them for what they're showing you, for what they're teaching you, and embrace them really. So I find that it is a practice that sometimes it's easy to forget, to be candid. Sometimes we can get carried away by everyday life or stress or things happening around us, but it pays off. It is almost like a form of meditation, if you may. So nowadays, in spite of I have a very busy schedule during the week, but I make a point when I get to the weekend to set time aside to both read. In fact, I try to read every night, but on the weekends, I make the point of setting time aside to write. And it could be hours, and like it is an extremely healing thing. And part of what I write about is what I have seen, what I have witnessed, and I I would I would say, I mean, and this is probably not everybody's cup of tea, but I would say it's probably a good idea to bring along a little journal, right?
Yeah.
When you're doing the Camino, because you're probably gonna find any number of things that maybe you want to sketch something, right? You
Yeah.
see something beautiful and you want to draw a sketch of it, or maybe you see something, or you hear the song of a bird, and like it just elicits a reaction from you, and like to have that little journal, that little notebook, could be a great way to capture that, and then come back, and who knows, maybe you publish your first poetry book after your Camino.
Yeah, that may be an option. That totally right. And then also, I don't know if you knew it, but like I commented to you last week or 2 weeks ago, uh, there is a Camino in the U.S., Camino de Santiago in the U.S.
What?
Yes, and it's in San Agustin, Florida.
That is amazing. I live in Orlando, so that's actually very, very close.
Yeah, and it's the distance is 50 kilometers, and it started from Jacksonville Beach, and it ends on the Cathedral of San Agustin.
That is amazing.
And then from those 50 kilometers, you can be recognized 30 of those 50 kilometers for the Camino in Spain. That means that for if you need to walk 100 kilometers, you already walk the 30 kilometers in Florida, then you just need to walk over there 70
That's amazing. I love that. I love that.
And then, of course, you need to have the certificate and all that in order that you can show. There is a passport for the San Agustin Camino.
Okay.
And then you need to get the stamps. And then, so we're going to have an episode where we're going to be showing some things that we went to San Agustin to do some videos over there that we were also going to show.
That's awesome. I love it. I love it.
Yes. Well, Manny, thank you very much for being here today and tell us about all those advices and recommendations. And then the most important thing, I believe, that is always talk to your doctor. That's the main thing that you need to do, because everybody health is different.
Yes.
And then also for sharing your book information. And if anybody wants to buy the book, where do they can find it?
Oh, just go to Amazon and look for Laberinto, okay. Manuel Hernandez, and you'll find it there. So,
okay, thank you very much. And thank you to you, Pilgrim, for watching our episode. And as always, please include your comments. What would you like to see in future episodes? That we take in consideration your comments. And thank you again, and buen camino, everybody.
Buen camino.